How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 41. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate everybody coming back and listening. It has been a while, but I am so excited to be back because we are going to be talking about the second film of 2023 from Marvel, and it's actually the highly anticipated third film in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. That's right. Today we're going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right in to talk about some of the questions and thoughts on my mind before I actually went to go watch that film. And so, just diving right into it, the first kind of thought that I had about this film is, well, knowing that, just from different interviews that we've seen of James Gunn, the director, this is going to be his final film. And his final Marvel-specific film, because now he's going to be the co-CEO of DC, and so he's going to start heading the film and television division, and so, this really is going to be his last hurrah with Marvel, and, really, again, it's been just nonstop great films from him, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and then Volume 2. And so how was he going to be able to try to top this one and really close out the story overall about all these characters that he's really made all of us love so much? Maybe not for everybody. Obviously, I'm not saying that it's a unanimous, like, yes, everybody loves these Guardians movies, but to me, it's actually been the franchise where the characters I love every single one that they've tried to introduce. Even though we've had great characters like, Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, and I love all of those characters, but something about the Guardians, because of how, again, they're misfits, they're, not your normal or typical superhero. They're just a really a group of individuals that kind of came together just to kind of help out, right? And it just was so relatable. And so this came at a very bittersweet moment. Again, obviously, I love this franchise, and I was super excited to see this Volume 3 film. But I was also sad because of the fact that this is probably the last time that we're going to see these characters. And so this leads in a very long-winded kind of intro, but this leads into the first question, which is, knowing that this is the last film of the Guardians of the Galaxy by James Gunn, who was going to make it out alive? And I know that's a very dark question to start off this podcast, but it's something that you kind of think about, knowing that, well, if this is really the last time that we're going to see this team, does that mean that they're all going to really get wiped out? Are they going to retire? Are they going to do, what are they going to do? And so I kind of thought about, maybe this would be a good way to kind of, again, close out some of these stories and have some of these characters, in film, I guess, retire, not have to appear anymore in the future films. And so my thought is that there probably was going to be some members of the team that were not going to survive. If you've seen any of the trailers, you see that Rocket is a prominent piece of that trailer, highlighting how he's on like his hospital bed and he's trying to survive. And so they're kind of teasing the fact that Rocket might pass away. To me, I'm shooting at three names that are the only ones that are going to survive from the Guardians team. I'm shooting for Mantis, Nebula, and Groot. I feel like everybody else might either, again, just not make it out of this movie alive, and kind of just, but at least come to a good ending before they obviously are not included in this film anymore, not alive at the end of it, I guess. But that's just my thoughts. Again, I know that it might be a little bit dark, and it might be like, whoa, why would you get rid of and kill off your main characters of this Guardians team? But again, knowing that this is the last film by James Gunn, this is completing his arc and his story for these characters. Again, it might make sense to kind of see them kind of ride off into the sunset, and obviously, with honor, obviously, helping out their family in the Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's kind of, my first thought is who's going to really survive. Second thought and question that I had was, how will Adam Warlock interact with the Guardians of the Galaxy? So Adam Warlock was, again, you see him in the trailer. He is played by Will Poulter, a great actor, and you see him in the kind of trailer like that, very minimal, and so it got me really curious. They teased him at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when the Sovereign people had this cocoon, and then it's like they basically called him Adam. And again, I was just kind of curious, how would this interact with the Guardians of the Galaxy team? Obviously he already has a grudge knowing that the Sovereign do not like the Guardians of the Galaxy. So obviously there's going to be some type of tension between these characters. But how would he end the film? Would he be a part of the team? Would he be one of the characters that didn't survive? Or, how would this film end with Adam Warlock and his inclusion with the Guardians of the Galaxy? So that's kind of one of the things that was really curious on my mind. And I'm also curious to know more about this character. I don't read the comics. My knowledge of Marvel is typically on just either I play video games or the movies themselves, and a little bit of just kind of Google research. But just kind of curious, like, how would Adam Warlock's inclusion now into this Volume 3, is he going to be a mainstay going forward if there are more Guardians movies that aren't directed and written by James Gunn, or what's going to happen to this character? So very curious to see that as well. And last but not least, I want to call out, how would Awesome Mix Volume 3 be? What are some of the songs and really use tunes that you typically don't hear, or like are things that James Gunn again pulls off that might not be like the A-side track, but they might be like a B-side track? Which songs is he going to pull and use throughout the story of Volume 3? And so I'm always very curious. I've loved the music so far from Awesome Mix Volume 1 and Volume 2. And again, no exceptions. I know that James Gunn will develop a really good mix for Volume 3. So I'm very curious, what might be that last song that that gets played in this film? What's going to be that final song that somebody plays on either the Zune or something on the ship? What is that song going to be? And then does it relate to anything that we've heard before as well? But guys, those are my thoughts before I actually got to check out the movie. Let's go ahead and dive into now my real thoughts. Now that I've actually seen the movie, I went to go see it on opening night at AMC and Dolby Cinema. So let's go ahead and dive into my full thoughts. And I just want to call it out. Spoiler warning for anybody who has not seen the movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Again, if you have not seen it, please go ahead, leave or like this video, come back. It'll be in your history. And then when you do check it out, come back and kind of get at least a good perspective as to my thoughts. And maybe we can kind of compare and comment down below as well to kind of see like, hey, what did you think about this movie? All right, guys, I got to check it out on opening night. I was, again, so excited, but so sad to see this movie. And as soon as it ended, I was just like, it was an emotional roller coaster, guys. There was so much stuff that was going on in the film. Again, just the characters that every time you would see them on the scenes, I just try to enjoy it to the fullest, because again, you never know if we're going to see these characters again. But I left the theater with just so much joy and just so much of grateful that I got to obviously experience this Volume 3 and the entire Guardians of the Galaxy arc. It was a great movie for me. I really enjoyed it. Like I mentioned a little bit before, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. More than, I'll say this, it's more than for sure the other Guardians movies, and definitely more than some of the other Marvel movies that have come out in the MCU. You just have a lot of highs and lows. You have a lot of characters that are kind of going through these different types of emotions. And you, again, get this very, this feeling that like you're experiencing it with this group of individuals in the film. And also with the audience that you're watching it with. And so it just makes that experience very different from any other kind of movie experience that I've had. But it was such a great time. I definitely enjoyed watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I want to kind of highlight some of my pros and then kind of, dip into some of the cons that I had about the movie. One of them is the family aspect that they portrayed in Volume 3. And I think it's obviously the benefit that this is not, obviously the first film introducing a lot of new characters. This is the third film in the Guardians of the Galaxy entry. So you already have Volume 1 and Volume 2 that have set up a really good arc for all of these main characters. But they even added like Mantis, they added Nebula, they've added Cosmo, they've added Kraglin, they've added all of these different characters. And you can just feel like that family aspect to all the characters. They all love each other. But what makes it even better is that there's bickering, there's arguing, there's these real life like family situations that, again, I'm not saying that other movies haven't portrayed that. They definitely have. But to see that in an MCU movie and to see, again, no family is perfect, right? Like they're not even related by blood. They're just all kind of, again, related just because of how much they're misfits, but they all come together to save each other, to help each other, and to just, again, to love each other, really. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing to kind of show. And you just feel that, like, whenever they all hug each other like that, whenever they, one of them thought that they were going to pass away, they end up getting saved. And, you could just feel like that emotion. You're happy with them. And so it was, so again, that family aspect throughout the entire story of Volume 3 was really cool to watch. And again, and I think you could tell that the actors themselves that are playing the characters also love each other in that kind of a way, or at least they portray it really well. But it was just an awesome aspect. So again, to me, the pro of this movie is just the family of the Guardians of the Galaxy, how they've basically just let the audience in. They've introduced more and more characters, and it doesn't change. That chemistry is still there between all of the characters, and it just continues to grow and grow as the movie goes on. Another aspect that I really enjoyed about this movie is the emotional piece of it. So kind of still, connected to the family part of it, but I honestly can say that this is probably the most emotional movie that the MCU has delivered. There's scenes where you can, again, in my audience, at least like that, you could hear a pin drop of how quiet it was, because everybody was just so in tune to, and I'll just kind of call it out here again, spoiler warning for anybody that hasn't seen it. A lot of the backstory of Rocket is portrayed in Volume 3. Like I mentioned before in the first segment, the trailers of Guardians of the Galaxy kind of show that Rocket's on a hospital bed. He got badly injured, and he's basically, it looks like he's about to die. And as the film goes on, they kind of show more and more about how Rocket came to be. And so they start from like the beginning as to when he was created by the High Evolutionary, who is actually the villain of this film. And the High Evolutionary is actually played by, and I'm going to butcher his name, so apologies, but Chukwudi Iwuji. They kind of show the entire kind of process of, like, again, him being created, him being told that he's really nothing, that he's just a batch to hopefully perfect another batch of animals that will become, different types of creatures that have consciousness and different aspects of that nature. But that whole piece was incredible, because they introduce these new, like, animal creatures that are like Rocket, but they're not, they're not raccoons. They're a rabbit. One's like a almost like a walrus, and then they're all different animals. But they introduce these characters, and in my mind, I'm already thinking, oh, geez, don't tell me that they're gonna kill these off like that. And as the story goes on about Rocket's backstory, you can kind of just feel like, okay, this is the reason why he's so cold-blooded. This is the reason why he's so distant and he's so hesitant to have a family, is because of what happened in this backstory, because of what the High Evolutionary did to his friends that he had, and making them feel worthless. And that was just, again, I teared up a couple of times. There's never been that type of a emotion, at least for me. For other people, they may have felt that in Endgame. They may have felt that for, like, Infinity War, when everybody dusted away. I never felt any of that. And then again, maybe it was because I kind of knew, like, hey, I know that they're going to come back in Infinity War, right? When they got dusted. Or in Endgame, when, like, hey, Iron Man sacrificed himself. I wasn't really, I didn't really get that emotional, because I knew, hey, this is a perfect ending. Iron Man sacrificing himself to save everybody else. It's a great way to end his arc. But here, again, you're seeing that backstory of Rocket, and you're getting all that kind of the gaps of his story flushed in. But it kind of just throws you at so many different types of twists, and it's a tearjerker, man. It's crazy, but very emotional, at least for me. Maybe other people that have seen it probably don't think it's as emotional as I'm kind of describing it. But it was an incredible way that they kind of kept going back and forth to, like, present time, and then back to where Rocket was kind of going through in his backstory. So to me, that emotional aspect was one of the biggest key differences, and what makes this, to me, a great Marvel movie is the emotional piece of it, is that it's so relatable that again, people can feel like these characters that aren't even human, they're creatures, and they still make you so filled with either joy or filled with so much sadness because of what's going to happen to them. So really good stuff. And then this kind of leads me into my other pro, which is the villain of this story in the High Evolutionary. Now, I'll call this out. I don't think, and when I say this as a pro, I'm saying that, he is a great villain in this specific story for the Guardians of the Galaxy. What the High Evolutionary does is he is basically trying to play God. He is creating universes. He is creating these types of creatures and beings, and basically all of these beings end up looking up to him. But what he's just trying to do is trying to make a utopia. He's trying to make this world that is perfect, with the perfect beings that have consciousness, that know exactly what they need to do, without violence. And so his intentions kind of, make sense early on, but as every other villain, you kind of see how that dark side ends up coming to light. But why this villain is a pro for me is because I think this is probably one of the rare Marvel villains where you actually hate this character. When you compare to other Marvel villains like Thanos, like Scarlet Witch, like Wenwu in Shang-Chi, like Killmonger, you don't really hate those characters. In some cases, some people can even relate to those characters. You're like, for Thanos, he's like, you have people saying Thanos was right. For the Scarlet Witch, you kind of feel for her because she just wants to be with her kids. For Killmonger, he's not allowed to go into Wakanda because of the actions of his father. And so all these villains in Marvel have done such a great job to make you feel this, like, yeah, I kind of agree with what's going on. Whereas the High Evolutionary, as soon as you get to understand what his experiments are doing to creatures, what he has been doing to Rocket when he was younger, what he did to his friends in the labs, you immediately get this feeling of hate, and you can't wait to see this guy die. You can't wait to see this guy taken out. And it's just, that I think is what Marvel did really well with this villain. Again, it's just a different type of a perspective. You typically, in different stories and movies, you do have villains and antagonists that, the intention is to hate them. But in most Marvel movies, you get a lot of villains that, again, you just kind of, hey, they're really cool. Their story makes sense. Their actions make sense. In this case, High Evolutionary starts off as like, okay, he just wants to create a utopia. Okay, but his means of how he wants to get there are ridiculous like that. And the movie really puts it out there. It's very kind of, they don't show a lot of like what he tries to do, but you can imagine how gory it could be like that, or grotesque it could be. So that, I think, was an amazing decision by James Gunn to, again, make a villain that is actually somebody that you can hate on, that you're supposed to hate on because of what he's done to Rocket and what he did before in his past as well. Last item on the pro side is the visuals that occurred throughout the movie. I know that I call out a lot of the visuals for Marvel and action movies, but again, to me, I thought that was a great decision by James Gunn and the rest of like the team on the film. They did a really cool job of, certain, conversations between characters like Star-Lord and Nebula, or Star-Lord and Gamora, or Rocket and Groot. You had all of these specific characters, and typically when they have conversations, you'll see cuts between the two characters. Well, here, what James Gunn did was he actually had like a swooping camera that would go back and forth between the characters. That way there wasn't as many cuts. And then what I love most is that they actually did that for some of the action scenes as well. And so it just made the visual of seeing it on the big screen that much more enjoyable. And it was very straightforward. You can follow the camera, and it would just it almost looked like a continuous shot. But I thought that was a really great idea in order to just, again, enhance the experience and make it feel different from the other Guardians movies as well. So definitely a pro for me on my side is just those continuous shots, the different camera angles that kind of swoop back and forth between characters, and just making it look very clean as well. All right, guys, jumping into some of my cons now. I don't have that many. I do have a couple of nitpicks. One of the nitpicks that I have is the Adam Warlock character and his involvement in the film. So again, spoiler warning for anybody that has not seen the movie. Like I mentioned in the first segment, I was really curious as to how much Adam Warlock would really interact with the Guardians. And he definitely did at the beginning. He ends up coming in and almost wiping them all out in the first 15 minutes of the film. I thought that was a great way to introduce him. But there were certain moments where you wouldn't see Adam Warlock. He was more of like a child in an adult's body, like because of the fact that he hadn't really evolved from his cocoon. There was actually a line that they called out where the High Evolutionary, is mentioned that he created the Sovereign and he helped create Adam Warlock, but they ended up taking him out of his cocoon a little bit earlier. So he's still kind of developing his brain. He's still kind of developing like who he is. And so he's very much like a young kid kind of getting to know the world. But yeah, it was just I was hoping to kind of see more of him interact with the Guardians. He didn't interact with them that much, only a few times at the end. And there was also a moment where in the film, the Sovereign, the mother of the Sovereign, the queen, her name's Aisha. Aisha is the mother of Adam Warlock, and she ends up passing away in the film. And I was really curious, like, oh man, this is going to be like, maybe this is a turn. Maybe this is where, Adam Warlock will then kind of get more of his side as to how he's going to deal with the death of his mother, considering that he's not that old, right? It's only been a couple of years. But they kind of glossed over that aspect of it. They didn't really highlight or really show what his emotions were after his mother died. And so I felt like that was like a missed opportunity. I would have loved to see more of that Adam Warlock character kind of get a feel for how he feels after the loss of his mother, and how, again, now he might feel that he has no family, but now he has the Guardians as his new family, right? His adopted family. So just a small nitpick. Again, I wanted more of Adam Warlock. I wanted to see more of his character interact with all the other characters in the Guardians. And I wanted to see that emotional side of losing his mother, losing somebody that he probably looked up to. But we didn't get that at all. One other nitpick I'll say is that although that, yes, I love the villain in the High Evolutionary, I was hoping to see more of his backstory as to where he came from. There is a line that says that he visited Earth and he really enjoyed the literature and the music, but they never really explain his power set. They never really explain like how old he is. Is he from another multiverse? Is he a time traveler? Like what, why was he able to visit Earth and he still kind of looks this certain way, or what's keeping him alive? I just kind of wanted a little bit more. Again, this is just definitely a personal nitpick on my side. But again, for me, I just felt like I wanted more out of the High Evolutionary. But granted, I understand why they probably wanted to give very little. That way, again, you can just really hate on this character for what he does to creatures. But I thought it would have been a really good idea to just kind of highlight a little bit more about where he came from, right? Like what, you get that detail of, again, creating the utopia. You get like why his reasoning is to find the perfect creatures. But I was just really hoping to where does he come from? Like, well, is he like thousands of years old, or, how does he get his powers? What gives him his powers? So just items like that. But again, definitely a personal nitpick on my side. Does not drop any kind of a rating for me about this film. All right, everybody, those are my extended thoughts about the pros and cons of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Again, I really enjoyed my time watching this movie. I'm most likely going to watch it again. It was hilarious. There was so many great jokes. There was so many great moments between the Guardians. Each Guardian got their moment to shine as well. And again, there's a lot of emotional aspects that really just hit a high note and can get anybody to probably tear up as well. So great time watching this movie, and I highly recommend everybody, if you have a chance, to check out the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 film. If you haven't seen the first two, go ahead and check those out as well, because I think they're probably one of the top Marvel movies in all of these specific MCU films that have come out over the past couple of years. All right, everybody, now that we've kind of covered the overall thoughts that I've had about Volume 3, I wanted to cover what my favorite performance was in the film by an actor or actress. This one's a little tough. I actually have two names that kind of come to mind. First one is going to be Peter Quill, played by Chris Pratt. I actually thought this is probably his best performance of all the three films. My favorite one was, again, his first appearance as Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. But I feel like here in Volume 3, he had much more room to kind of play around with his emotions as the character. He had to really play that kind of drunken, depressed guy because he couldn't get his girl in Gamora. He's trying to convince her the entire movie as to, why she should be with the Guardians of the Galaxy, why she should be with him. And, you get to kind of play off of that. Then you get to play off of his emotion for his family, for Rocket, for all the other characters, like why he's trying to keep them together, why he wants to keep them alive as much as possible. And you get to see him get very emotional and at points, tear up because he feels like he's going to lose his family. And then you get the happy endings as well, like that you get to see him kind of have that closure. You see him kind of complete his arc as to, well, you know what? Like I've been running my whole life. Now maybe it's time to kind of settle down and actually go back to where I actually am from, go back to Earth. And so it was, again, a great performance by Chris Pratt. Probably, again, to me, it might be wrong. Maybe not. Other folks that probably see the film might not have that same kind of a feeling, but I thought Chris Pratt did really well. And I mentioned him already, but Chukwudi Iwuji as the High Evolutionary was, again, a great villain because he did what a antagonist should do, is make you hate him, right? And especially in the context of these type of superhero films in Marvel, most cases like Loki, Thanos, Killmonger, you kind of like these characters, you're intrigued. But for the High Evolutionary, again, his performance was so great that even as the film goes on, he comes out very intellectual, very much almost like my brother said it really well, very similar to kind of like Kang, where you have this man that has been alive for maybe thousands of years, and he's very smart. His IQ is very high, and he knows exactly kind of what he wants. But as the story unfolds, you then see him kind of break down, and then by the end of it, by the last half of the film, every scene he comes out and he's like yelling and screaming. He's having like these tirades. He is just frustrated because nothing is going his way, and so I thought that, again, that was a great job by Chukwudi Iwuji. I have both Chris Pratt and Chukwudi Iwuji as really the two main performances that I really enjoyed out of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If I had to choose one, I'll probably go with Chukwudi Iwuji as High Evolutionary. Again, just because he was just, again, very intriguing. He kind of made you feel like, well, why is he doing this? And then you kind of get to feel like, oh man, this guy needs to die because of what he's doing to these creatures and what his plans are as well. So great job overall. And I also want to shout out the rest of the crew that played out on the characters, like Zoe Saldana, Will Poulter, Karen Gillan, Sean Gunn, Dave Bautista, everybody that had a part to play. Again, everybody did their jobs to make this film even more emotional and make it even feel more of like a family movie, right? Because you really care about these characters. But great job overall, and it just made my experience of this film that much more enjoyable. All right, everybody, now that we've kind of talked about my favorite performance, I want to dive into my favorite scene or moment of the film. I know I always go with the action sequence. I try to sometimes avoid it, but I can't do it in this case because in the third act of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, it actually contains one of my favorite scenes. And in that scene is basically a hallway fight scene where it is basically one continuous shot as No Sleep Till Brooklyn is playing by the Beastie Boys. And I thought that was so cool because they interacted again with like a continuous one camera shot length, and they show all of the Guardians just having their moments with these different types of assassins. And you see Star-Lord kind of rolling around and kind of using his blasters and his element guns. You see Rocket kind of blasting these fools. You see Groot just kind of extend his roots like that and just wreak havoc. You see everybody, but you see, I was going to say Batista, but you see Drax, you see Mantis, Nebula gets punched in the face, her head and neck kind of break, and then her machine parts just kind of fold her back up, and then she just starts killing these guys. It was insane. It was an amazing scene. And again, I just love that they kind of interacted with like the slow-mo aspect of it. They would slow down at certain parts and then kind of speed up. But again, it looked like it was one continuous shot in that hallway scene until all assassins are dead. And it was just such a great, great shot. And it was probably my favorite moment in regards to the Guardians of the Galaxy, because again, you see the entire team together as one. And then they're also playing great music in the background. So what more could you ask for, right? But that was an awesome moment in the film, and I really enjoyed it. And definitely, one of the things that I look forward to if I do watch it again. All right, everybody. Now that we've talked about the overall film of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, we've talked about my favorite performance as well as the, favorite scene that I had in the film. Now I want to cover the final question, which is this film timeless? To me, at this moment, and as soon as I came out, I can definitely see myself rewatching this movie. Granted, I would want to watch Volume 1 and Volume 2, So I guess it is a caveat that I might want to, I mean, you technically could watch the standalone if you wanted to, but I feel like the story needs to flush out like the entire team, how they build up to this point, so that again, the ending kind of just hits you in a better way, right? I was completely wrong in the film, so spoiler warning again, guys, if you haven't seen the movie. But nobody actually died in this film. The entire Guardians team actually survived. But what was beautiful about it is that they all kind of went their separate ways. Some members, went off to kind of explore and find themselves. Others went to the Ravagers. Peter, like I mentioned before, went to Earth to try to kind of get back to his roots of where he came from. And so it was a very beautiful ending. And again, all of that emotion, all of that, again, how the narrative just kind of hit is only going to make it sweeter when you rewatch Volume 1 and Volume 2. So to me, again, this film had it all, really. It had a great family aspect. It had great characters. It had funny moments. It had emotion that could, again, make you feel that. It just kind of makes you feel what the characters are feeling. And it's like you could just kind of get that emotion in you about watching these characters. And I don't know, like to me, when a film has all those different types of aspects, it just gets me even more excited to rewatch it. Granted, again, it is one of the more emotional films. I'm not too big into kind of rewatching like films that could probably, again, make you cry or make you kind of feeling this type of way after a film. But again, I think it ends off in a very happy and lighthearted moments that, again, it just definitely offers itself to be rewatched over and over again. I had a great time watching this movie. Like I said before, I'm probably going to watch it again. And I think what was beautiful, and again, spoiler warning if I keep kind of mentioning a lot of the different aspects of it, but the last song that's played, and this is one of the questions that I brought up, is how is the music going to be? The music was phenomenal, but the last song that's played in the movie is Come and Get Your Love, which is actually the first song that was played in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 by Peter Quill when he was on Morag. And so I thought that was such a great and clever way by James Gunn and the team to finish off and have that really be the last song of the film. Just, where it all started. And you kind of see, Rocket, who is now the leader of the Guardians, leading a new group. And they're kind of taking them on to new adventures and new stories. But again, guys, for me personally, this film had a lot of great positive stuff. Are there nitpicks? Definitely, every film has those nitpicks, but I don't think those negatives bog down the experience for me of the film. I will definitely rewatch it. I can't wait to kind of, again, recapture some of the jokes that I may have missed, watch that hallway scene one more time, and really, again, just get to experience this Guardians of the Galaxy, family and crew one more time, knowing that, again, we probably are not going to see these characters ever again, at least together in a film. Definitely recommend you guys go out and check it out in theaters. But more importantly, if you have seen it, let me know down below what your thoughts were for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you feel like it was a timeless movie? Is it your top Guardians film? To me, personally, I still think Volume 1 is the best film of the franchise, with this one probably being number 2, and then Volume 2 being the third best film. But that could definitely change if I keep rewatching them. But let me know, guys, what you think down below in the comments. All right, everybody. Appreciate all of you guys staying and listening. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 41 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week as we cover a new movie that we check out in theaters and determine if that film is timeless. All right, everybody. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you later.